everybody, welcome back to the podcast, the Project Investigation Collaboration. I can't talk already this morning. This is going to be fantastic. Which is a collaboration between the Veritas Project and investigator Todd. And this is Robert Curtis, the founder of the Veritas Project. Hello. And I am investigator Todd Boyer. And welcome to the podcast. And we have some great news this morning. We are this close, literally 25 people away from 5,000 subscribers. 5,000, yep. So that's a pretty big milestone for us, considering 4 weeks ago, we hit 27.
Yeah, 27.
27. So we're really blowing it up out there, and we thank you guys for following us. And today we're going to talk about famous hauntings from around the world.
Yeah.
So let's see. We're going to start off, I guess, in the Philippines.
The Philippines are what, number 2 subscribers?
Yep, we're pretty big in the Philippines for some reason. So the Aswang, Aswang from the Philippines. It's a mythical creature in the Philippines that's kind of folklorish, and it's often associated with like a vampire type of shapeshifter kind of situation. So, the Aswangs are said to transform into different forms. I mean, they can become a cat, a dog, a bat, all kinds of different transformations. Yeah. And then they're nocturnal. They prey on pregnant women and young children. So there's a big thing about getting the kids in, before it goes dark. And so, and they believe that they have a taste for the human flesh.
Right, they're cannibals.
So,
like to eat the people.
Well, speaking of cannibals, let's start our first rabbit hole. We might as well go down the rabbit hole. Did you know that if you are a cannibal, there's an actual disease that you can get from eating brain tissue that causes you to laugh yourself to death?
I saw that.
Literally laugh yourself to death. You can't stop laughing, and it, crazy rabbit hole. You brought it up. It popped into my head. You know how my ADHD rabbit holes go. Right. So we get kind of crazy.
So it's weird how the mythos are all over the world. You would think, like vampires, you would think would be an Eastern European type thing, but then here they are in the Philippines as well. And then, Eastern Europeans never colonized the Philippines, so how did the vampire mythos get all the way out there?
Well, see, that's what we always say is where these legends come from. They got to come from somewhere. Right. Somebody saw something at some time to create these.
It has to be a foundation in some kind of truth. Right. Otherwise, how would it transform? Into stories from different cultures and different parts of the world.
Well, our favorite is dragons. Yeah, how does every culture in the world have dragons?
Right.
If there was no such thing as a dragon, why does every culture have it?
They look the same, which is even weirder.
So, it is kind of a regional thing with different features in different regions. Right. So kind of like the Bigfoot. Yeah, yeah. A little bit different, but the same.
Different like flavor of that same creature.
And of course, it kind of goes back to the garlic, the salt, like a vampire. Yeah, so you get the same kind of stuff.
Right.
Trying to keep them
iconography. The cross. Wards off the Aswang too, which is even more weird because that's like 100% vampires.
Right. Right.
So it's like, is there vampires hiding in the Philippines? Like, how'd they get there?
Right. And it's usually in the villages or like the rural areas, so it's out in the forest, and it's actually more of a creature than a humanoid kind of thing because it's a shapeshifter. So, but that's our big one from the Philippines. I'm gonna click on our next one here, and we'll take a look at Vietnam, which Vietnam is our number one subscriber base. Right. Yep. So they love us in Vietnam. I don't know why. We're just two guys sitting in a basement.
They love how much we butcher the names of their stuff. So here comes some more butchery. Hang Dao water tank.
Yeah, the Hang Dao water tank. It's in Hanoi, and it's said to be haunted by the ghost of a young woman. And according to the legend, the woman died tragically during the French colonial era, and she now haunts the area.
Right.
So, you want to go ahead and give some bullet points there?
Right. Witnesses claim to have seen the ghostly figure in traditional Vietnamese attire. So she has, like the Raiden hat and like traditional, traditional dress for the area, which is good. Because that
makes sense.
Right. If you didn't want her wearing like a French dress, you'd think, oh, this might have been a colonizer that got killed there. Yeah, they say it's a beautiful woman who appears near the tank and along nearby streets that lead to the Hangdao water tank. So they say the spirit may be seeking justice or attempting to communicate a message, which we see that with the Resurrection Mary. We see that with a lot of these stories where a ghost is on the roadway and people interact with it, and it tries to tell them some sort of premonition.
Right.
Locals avoid the area at night,
makes sense. I mean,
strange occurrences, right?
You don't want to go messing with a ghost in the middle of the night, you know. So let's see. The tank. The story is intertwined with Hanoi's historical and cultural fabric. You know, that's the thing about America is we're such a new country.
Yeah.
We don't have that long history like other places in the world do. So a lot of your overseas ghost stories have a way longer tradition than your American ghost stories.
In our tradition, our traditional stories are more of stuff that's left over from the Native Americans.
Right.
So you have like
or
the
a lot of Civil War
and,
stuff, and
the slide rock bolter and swamp creatures, and things that the Native Americans interacted with here is what we think of because the Piasaw bird and those sort of things, because we don't. You know, since we've only been here for a couple hundred years, we don't have thousands of years of history like Europe does, or Vietnam in this case.
So there's a lot of sharing this story with visitors to make sure that they don't go and mess with it and that kind of stuff. They make sure that they know that you're in the area and you're in a bad area. Don't go here at night. That kind of thing. So that carries into part of the history.
That's
too.
Nice of them to do that.
Right.
In Europe, they would just be like, "Yeah, go on, sucker.
Go on up there and check it out.
Roll your dice, my man."
So our next one we're going to cover is the Flying Dutchman. Now, this is a classic story. This one's been around for quite some time.
Oh yeah.
The Flying Dutchman is a ghost pirate ship. It's a pretty well-known one.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why we grabbed it. And normally, if you see the Flying Dutchman, it's another one of those harbinger of doom type of situation.
Right.
So, maybe a sinking of a ship is going to happen.
Storms coming,
that kind of stuff.
There's pirate waters or something. The ship is like it travels in a mist.
Yes.
Or a cloud. So you'll see it on the horizon before you get to it, and usually the captain will avoid it.
Right.
He'll steer clear of the cloud, and the ship itself is said to glow, I believe.
And it's a classic, wooden sailing ship, but it's really tattered and beat up, So, this is your classic pirate ghost haunting.
Pirate ghost. Everybody loves pirate ghosts.
I mean, there's accounts of this thing for years and years.
And recently.
Yeah.
It's still in the cruising life. Forums, they still talk about sightings of the Flying Dutchman. They say that they would see it on the horizon, and when they would navigate towards it to see if they could render aid or whatever, then it would always be on the horizon.
Right, so it stays just out of reach.
Right, so if you traveled in that direction, you would never catch it because it was always just a little bit out of your reach.
Right, and it makes you wonder where these start at. In this case, they think it was maybe a captain that, went bad or whatever.
Right.
So the ship was taken over.
It's always some kind of moral story, because the pirates did something wrong.
Right.
Like they let a kid drown when they were raiding the ship or something, and then the next morning they saw the Flying Dutchman. So it's always a story like that. Like something had happened that they did something wrong, and then now the Flying Dutchman has come to make the bad stuff happen. Pirate ghosts.
Yay! Pirates and ghosts. You can't beat that. Those are two of my favorites.
Right.
So our next one is another very, very, very famous place that a lot of people go to. A lot of YouTubers check it out. It is the I'll let you butcher the name. I don't want to.
It's Okigahara. Okigahara.
Basically, it's the suicide forest.
Right, in Japan.
And it is an honorable thing for you to end yourself in Japan. We got to kind of watch what we say, because
the algorithm bounce you out.
So it is the honorable thing for you to do to delete yourself in Japan. So this forest is very well known for people going there to perform this act.
Yeah, going back centuries.
Yes, a long, long time. And this is supposedly one of the most haunted places in Japan, if not the most haunted place in Japan.
Without a doubt.
And it is nothing for you to go down through this forest and find people who have, you know...
Or see a tent that's all caved in, and because it's been there for years, or strings that go through the woods, because people would tie a string to their tent, and then when they went off in the woods to go to wherever, go to the bathroom or whatever, they would leave a string with them. So that way, maybe if they decide to kill themselves or whatever the algorithm likes, you know, they unalive themselves. The people would find the tent first, and then they would follow the string to where their body was. So it's a sad thing to think about, you know. The people would unalive themselves over petty things that are just in the moment.
Right.
You know, like you think it's like the most important thing right now, but in like 6 months you'd look back on it and be like, wow, that was dumb.
Yeah.
You know, but instead they can't, because they ended it too early.
Right. So obviously it's called the Suicide Forest.
Yeah.
Obviously lots of hauntings, and actually it blocks the sunlight out of there. Right. So it's a dim place.
The trees are damp. And the roots from the trees come up out of the ground, so it's hard to walk around in there because there's so many roots and crags and different rocks and everything. So it's not a fun place to hike even, because like a lot of Japan hikers will go into every forest and make a trail, but in the Aokigahara forest they don't go in there because it's dark, it's cold all the time. It's hard to walk around in because of all the roots. Right. And you can get hurt really easy and then not make it back out.
So yeah, obviously something this big, is going to be folklore.
Oh yeah.
With its history, and excuse me. Normally this would be a place that's like really beautiful, but because of its history and the things going on there, it's really dark place. So there. So excuse me. In Japan, there's efforts underway to help with mental health and kind of cut down this whole thing. In the
entrances, there's a big sign that explains all of the phone numbers you could call or websites. It even has a little QR code now that you can click on, and it'll let you talk to the local police or somebody that can get you mental health counseling instead of going into the forest.
Right. So let's talk about the Grey Lady of Hampton Court Palace in England. Yeah. So the Hampton Court Palace is supposed to be haunted by Catherine Howard. Yeah. Now, she was the 5th wife of Henry VIII, and she was executed for adultery. So
yeah, you know how that works in England, right? But if the wife got a little too old, she was in her 20s. Blamed, yeah. She got into her 20s, so she was a little past her prime. The king would come up with some kind of contrived story to send her out to the tower, and then he would miraculously find a new wife who was probably about 16. So yeah, that's how it used to work back then.
So the story is that she's actually trying to seek forgiveness. And visitors and staff have reported spotting her and unexplicable noises. I mean, your classic
hanging out in her painting,
right? So they've also claimed to actually see her,
right?
So
she shows up on the
hunting.
Security footage and different like people will take a picture of an artifact and then she'll be in the reflection of the artifact or in the background of a bunch of people. They'll take a picture of a crowd of people and they're all in modern dress, but there's one person in the back who's wearing like a Victorian gown. So.
And this one has been investigated a lot by paranormal groups. And like he said, they caught a lot on the surveillance and whatnot. Right. But then the paranormal investigators have also caught pictures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So this is a legit haunting that's taken place. So
and the Hampton Court is really cool about it. They really embrace that haunting. Whereas a lot of places they try to shush it down. They don't want you to believe that it's really really haunted. You know, it's they play for the history, and then like around October, suddenly everywhere is haunted.
Every place is haunted.
But then in November, no, we don't want none of that. But that palace is really, they really embrace the haunting, and they'll let anybody go in there and do an investigation. So that's kind of nice.
So then we have the Bell Witch of Tennessee.
Yeah.
And this kind of almost falls in kind of like the Blair Witch kind of situation.
Right.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if that's where they got the idea for the Blair Witch.
Right.
But it's a famous haunting dating back to the early 19th century, actually. And it revolves around the Bell family of Adams, Tennessee, and their encounters with a malevolent spirit.
Right.
So.
And she was, Kate Batts is the person they believe was the witch. And she was another shapeshifter. She could take the shape of a wolf, or sometimes an owl, or a bird in the woods. And there was always something unnatural about the animal. So if you saw her as the wolf, there was always a gigantic wolf.
Right.
You know, or the owl would be a weird color, and the raven was unnaturally like the size of a hawk or a falcon, you know. So there was always something off about it.
And she was believed to be able to like see the future and inflict harm on people, you know, with curses and whatnot. So, you know, kind of almost like a voodoo or hoodoo kind of situation.
Well, the Appalachian people there was always an elder woman, like the what do they call that, midwife.
Right.
Like the village midwife who did tea reading. She did, you know, ointments and salves and made like healing teas and things like that. And then once the witchcraft, you know, thing burst out onto the scene, then suddenly they were like, well, maybe some of that is witchcraft, you know.
Right.
So that's where a lot of that comes from, you know. Back in the European days, though, when they celebrated the midwife, you know, like she was like one of the town elders. Whenever they had a meeting, even though she wasn't like one of their representatives, the midwives would
considered to be wise,
to give advice to the village. You know, they were revered, whereas in America they were like, no, they're witch.
And you know, there's numerous accounts that they've documented weird stuff going on out there at the at the farm. And then the legend has obviously inspired books and movies.
Yeah,
and,
Donald Sutherland.
So, the Bell Witch haunting remains a prominent part of the American folklore, and it's cited in discussions of poltergeist activity and paranormal
goes on right now.
So
still to this day.
There's a cave located in Adams is considered the haunted site associated with the story.
Right.
So it's a specific cave that she may have used for
rituals and stuff, right?
So,
and they think that when the battle was going on between the what are they, Adams? What's their name is? She was the Batts, Kate Batts. So the Bell family.
The Bell family.
The Bell family, and they're from Adams.
Right.
But they think that they burned down her cabin during the back and forth.
Yeah, that makes sense. So
then she fell back into the cave for safety, and then they looked in the cave and could never find her because it goes in all different directions. So that's why they believe she lived in the cave, because the attacks kept coming.
Right.
So they were being drug out of bed at night. The one daughter was slapped in the face multiple times in front of the entire family because that she was just being attacked. The whole family was being attacked. Bats flying into the house, and it's crazy. Crazy story if you look it up. It's one of those things where like the movie doesn't do as much as like the books do.
Right.
Where the real story is actually crazier than the movies were.
So here locally we have one of the most haunted places in the United States. We have the Lemp Mansion.
Oh yeah.
So that place with the Lemp Mansion has multiple unalivings by the Lemp family. It used to be a overflow for the hospital.
Yeah, right.
And they do not know how many people have actually died in the Lemp Mansion, because if they sent you to that overflow, you were expected to die.
Yeah.
And that's just, so that place is like ridiculously haunted. I used to give tours over there.
Yeah, we did.
Bob gave tours over there before I did, actually.
Yeah.
And they have a room in there that we've talked about before on previous.
They call it the nursery.
The nursery.
It's a solarium.
Yep.
It's a big round room with big tall windows, and they thought one of the ways you could cure tuberculosis was to get sunlight. So they would put people in these lounge chairs in front of the windows all day, and the sun would shine on them, and they thought that was a way to cure tuberculosis.
So yeah, so that one is you know, been around for quite a while. You know, they actually have like a cave system. You know, so running water is a good sign of you know, haunting, because you have that constant moving of the water, the energy created,
and the energy that flows through the rocks, and it creates an energy.
So they actually had caves that they could go to the bottom of the mansion and then go all the way over to the Lemp Brewery, which is like a block away.
Yeah.
And they had a theater and a bowling alley and like a pool and everything down in these caves. And so now with the 2 unalivings and then all those deaths that happen in there, that place is just a hotbed of activity.
Well, you know, the cave system is even bigger than that.
Yeah.
You could go into the cave where the cave system starts, down here by Jefferson Barracks, and you could walk underground all the way to north of Forest Park.
Wow.
Underground through the caves. And during the Prohibition era, they built speakeasies in the caves.
Yep.
So there's shops, like a lot of businesses around St. Louis couldn't afford the ice because the brewery would buy up all the ice. And then the price of ice in the city would be astronomical because the brewery has deep pockets. So they had access in their bar that went down into the caves, and they would store.
Where it's always 50 degrees.
Yeah, they would store all of their booze in the caves, and then, you know, bring it up. And a lot of times when they would bring the pulley up, there would be less than they put down, because people who lived in the caves would steal the liquor, and they would have their own little soirees down there. So then they would send regulators. The district hired strongmen to go into the caves and chase the people out, and then they would weld up gates in certain sections of it. And one time I went down, what is it, Manchester? I think there was an old gas station they had torn down in Manchester, and the entrance was still there. So we went down in there and did a little urbexing.
Nice.
And there was parts of it where you could see wrought iron gates had been welded up over the section of the fence, and it was completely full up to the top with like old tires and rags and stuff.
Wow. So for you guys that don't know what urbexing is, it's urban exploring, where you go out and you find abandoned places and go in and check it out, basically, you know. And there's so many places like that around that, you know, you don't really know the history of and have crazy things inside, you know, that are just left behind. And you know, once again, it's the thing that we talk about, stuff just lost to time.
Right, and people don't even know. Yeah. Like back in the day, a lot of our main streets here, because it used to snow so much more than it does now, but the streets would be impassable, you know, and one level below where the sidewalk is, there's a whole nother sidewalk. Right. And they had little pop-up elevators that you would knock on the little thing, and the owner would flip a switch and the elevator would pop up. You would get in a little 1-person or 2-person elevator, and it just closes back up, and then you would go into the store from the underneath. Then you could walk all up and down the block underground to go from one store to the next and do all your shopping, and then they would put you back out onto the street, and then you give it.
Now, Seattle, they do tours of their underground. They have underground like that, and they give tours. It's a shame that we don't see the things we see. Another big underground situation is downtown St. Louis. One of the buildings there used to be the headquarters for the railroad station. And I had to go down there for my day job. And it is multiple sublevels. With the ceilings like 30, 40 feet high in these sublevels. Right. And it's, you know, they used to drive trains down and into those buildings to work on them. And you would never know it from the street. But once you get in there, I mean, you're like 25 feet in the air, you know, on this thing. So,
I see the battery things flashing.
Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up here. You know, we thank you guys for joining us on the live and on the podcast. And check out all our social medias. Robert Curtis on different things, and the Veritas Project.
RS Curtis 73 or anything.
And then I'm Investigator Todd on all the platforms. You know, hit that like button, subscribe, share it, please. It'll help us out. And remember,
stay curious
and find the truth. And we will catch you next time. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Have
a good day.